She walked up to me in a grocery store and said, "I know you." And for 1 second I honestly thought I was about to be mistaken for somebody else. That would have been easier. I was standing in the cereal aisle at Benson's Market in Ashford, Oregon, holding 2 boxes I didn't even want. One was some whole grain thing with a smiling farmer on the front. The other had dried berries in it, which sounded better than it ever tasted. I had been staring at them like the future of my life depended on breakfast. That was how most of my days felt since I came back. 3 months earlier, I had packed what I could fit into my car, left Seattle behind, and moved into the small rental behind my uncle's old garage. I told people I was resetting. That sounded better than saying I had no idea what I was doing after my marriage ended. Ashford looked almost the same. Same 2 stoplights. Same cracked sidewalks near Main Street. Same little hardware store with the bell over the door. Same grocery store where everyone pretended not to stare, then asked your aunt about you later. I had spent years thinking I was too big for this place. Now I was back, standing under buzzing lights, unable to choose cereal. Then I heard her voice. "I know you." Calm. Certain. Not loud. Not surprised. I turned with 1 box still in each hand. She stood a few feet away with a red shopping basket hooked over her arm. Dark hair tucked behind one ear. Denim jacket. No makeup except maybe something light around her eyes. She looked like someone who had not planned this moment, but also wasn't afraid of it. At first, my brain refused to help me. Then I saw the small scar above her right eyebrow. The dimple that showed only on one side when she almost smiled. The way she tilted her head when she was waiting for me to catch up. My hands went weak around the cereal boxes. "Grace." Her mouth lifted a little. "Nathan," she said, like she was reading my name off an old letter she had kept in a drawer. I set 1 box back on the shelf too fast and almost knocked over 3 more. "Wow," I said, because apparently 12 years of silence had prepared me to say one useless word. "Yeah," she said. "Wow." We looked at each other in that strange way people do when they used to know everything about each other, and now they don't even know where to start. Grace, my first real everything. The girl who used to ride with me down gravel roads with her feet on my dashboard. The girl who sat beside me on the bleachers at the old baseball field while we talked like 18-year-olds who thought the world would wait for them. The girl I kissed by the lake the summer before I left. The girl I promised I wouldn't disappear on. Then I disappeared. "You live here?" I asked. She glanced around like the answer was obvious. "I do now." "You?" "Yeah, for a little while." Her eyes stayed on mine. "A little while," she repeated. I heard the question inside it. I deserve that. I shifted the cereal box from one hand to the other. "I got back in March." "I heard you were back." Of course she had. In Ashford, news traveled faster than weather. "I didn't know you were," I said. "I came back a few years ago." There was a quiet pause. A woman pushed a cart past us, looked at both of us, and immediately pretended she had not noticed anything. Grace watched her go, then looked at the cereal in my hand. "You still hate that kind." I looked down. I was hoping I'd changed. "You haven't changed that much." That almost made me smile. Almost. For a second, I could see us at 17, sitting on the hood of my old truck, sharing gas station coffee we both claimed to like. She had worn a green sweatshirt with paint on the sleeve. I had told her I was going to get out of Ashford and make something of myself. She had listened like she believed in me more than I did. Then graduation came. Seattle came. My big plans came. And I left so fast I barely looked back. Grace's face softened, but her voice did not. "You left without saying goodbye." There it was. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just placed between us like something heavy on a table. I swallowed. "I know. I waited for you to come by that night." I remembered that night. I remembered driving past the turn that led to her house. I remembered gripping the steering wheel and telling myself it would only be harder if I stopped. "I thought it would be less painful," I said. Grace's eyes narrowed just a little. "Did it?" I let out a short breath. "No." She nodded once, like that was the only honest answer she would have accepted. The store kept moving around us. Carts squeaked. Someone laughed near the dairy section. A kid asked his mom for cookies and got turned down with the tired voice of someone who had already said no 3 times. But the aisle felt smaller. Grace looked different and exactly the same. Older, of course. Not in a bad way. Just more settled into herself. At 18, she had been all quick smiles and restless energy. Now she looked like someone who had learned how to stand still. "I heard you got married," she said. "I did." "Still?" I shook my head. "No. It ended." She looked down at her basket. Apples, spinach, coffee, a loaf of bread. I'm sorry. Thanks. I paused. You? Same story. Different details. You were married? For 7 years. I tried to picture it and couldn't. Not because it was impossible, but because some selfish part of me had frozen her at 18, like nothing had happened after I left. That was stupid. Life had happened to her too. I'm sorry, I said. She gave a small shrug, but it wasn't careless. It wasn't all bad. It just became not a marriage anymore. More like two people sharing bills and pretending that counted. I nodded because I understood that too well. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then Grace looked at me in a way that made me feel like the cereal aisle had turned into a confession booth. I used to wonder what would have happened if you stayed, she said. My chest tightened. I could have made a joke. I could have said we were kids. I could have said life works out how it works out. All those easy lines people use when they don't want to touch the truth. Instead, I said, I wondered too. Her fingers tightened around the red basket handle. Did you? More than I should have. That landed. I saw it in her face. She looked away first, toward the front windows where afternoon light was coming through the glass. Then she looked back at me. There's coffee next door, she said. I knew the place. Millie's. Same narrow tables, same chalkboard menu, same burnt smell near the espresso machine. Coffee sounded simple. With Grace, it was not simple at all. Coffee meant sitting down. Sitting down meant talking. Talking meant opening doors I had spent 12 years keeping shut. I looked at the box in my hand. Grace noticed. You can bring the cereal, she said. That made me laugh, just once. I don't even want it. I know, she said again, softer this time. And somehow that was worse. I put the box back on the shelf. We walked to the register together, not close, but not far apart either. Outside, the late afternoon air felt warmer than it had when I went in. Grace stood beside me on the sidewalk with her groceries in one hand and her keys in the other. Millie's was 2 doors down. I could still leave. I could make some excuse. I could say I had somewhere to be, even though we both knew I didn't. But Grace was looking at me, and for the first time since I came back to Ashford, leaving felt harder than staying. So I said, coffee sounds good. She nodded, like maybe that was the first right answer I had given her in 12 years. We stepped into the little coffee shop, and when we sat across from each other by the window, I understood something before either of us spoke. The past wasn't behind me anymore. It was sitting right there at the table, holding a paper cup, waiting to see what kind of man I had become. Millie still had the same little bell over the door. It gave a weak ring when Grace walked in ahead of me, and for some reason that sound hit me harder than seeing the grocery store had. I remembered coming here with her after school, back when we had $2 between us and acted like sharing one coffee was romantic instead of broke. Now we were both grown, both tired in ways we didn't know how to explain yet, and the woman behind the counter looked at Grace like she was a regular. Usual? The woman asked. Grace nodded. And whatever he wants. I almost said I'd have the same, just to make it easy, but Grace looked over her shoulder. You still drink it black? Yeah. Of course you do. What does that mean? It means you always liked acting tougher than you were. The woman behind the counter smiled like she had walked into the middle of something, and I looked down at the pastry case like it suddenly mattered. We got our coffee and sat by the front window. Same small round table. Same uneven leg that made the cups wobble if you leaned your elbow wrong. Outside, Main Street moved slowly. A truck rolled past. 2 older men stood near the barber shop talking with their hands in their pockets. Ashford did not hurry for anybody. Grace wrapped both hands around her cup. So, she said, Seattle. I laughed under my breath. That's a big place to fit into one word. You wanted big. I did. And I looked out the window for a second. It was big. She waited. That's not an answer, she said. No, I said. It's not. I took a sip of coffee. It was too hot, but I needed something to do. I thought getting out would fix everything, I said. I thought if I had the job, the apartment, the busy streets, all of it, then I'd become the guy I kept pretending I was. Grace listened without jumping in. For a while it worked, I said. Or it looked like it worked. I got a decent job. Got promoted. Got married. Bought furniture that matched. Went to dinners where people talked about plans like they were building a life out of calendar invites. Grace gave a small smile at that, but it faded. And then? And then it got quiet in the wrong way. I rubbed my thumb along the side of the paper cup. My divorce finalized in January. After that, Seattle felt too loud and too empty at the same time. Every street reminded me of something that didn't work. She looked down at her coffee. I know that feeling. Yeah. She nodded. I got married young, she said. Too young, probably. But at the time I thought that was what you did. You love someone. You build something. You make it permanent before life changes its mind. I wanted to ask if she loved him, but that felt like stepping somewhere I hadn't earned the right to step. Grace answered anyway. He wasn't a bad person, she said. That made it harder in some ways. We didn't have one big moment where everything fell apart. We just slowly became two people who shared bills and forgot how to reach for each other. I nodded. That's almost worse. It is, she said, because nobody knows what to blame. A couple came in behind us, laughing about something. The sound filled the space for a second, then settled. Grace watched them order, then turned back to me. My mom got sick a few years ago, she said. That's why I came back. I thought it would be temporary. Help her through appointments, handle the house, stay for a season. Is she okay? She's better now? Slower, but better. I'm glad. Me too. Grace smiled, but there was weight behind it. After that, I didn't leave. I kept waiting to want my old life back, but I didn't. It was the first time I wasn't trying to become somebody for someone else. That stayed with me. I looked at her across the little table, and for the first time I understood that she had not been frozen in the past. She had carried her own years, her own rooms, her own hard mornings, her own quiet endings. I'm sorry I didn't know any of that, I said. You weren't around to know it. She didn't say it cruelly. That was what made it worse. I nodded once. I deserve that. I'm not trying to punish you. I know. Do you? She asked. I looked at her then. Her face was calm, but her eyes weren't. Not fully. I was mad at you for a long time, she said. I figured. No, Nathan. I don't mean annoyed. I mean really mad. The kind where your name could come up in a normal conversation and my whole day would change. I sat still. I waited that night, she said. You told me you'd come by before you left. You said you didn't want goodbye to be some rush thing in a driveway. I remembered saying that. I remembered meaning it. Then I remembered packing my duffel bag before sunrise and leaving before I could change my mind. I drove past your street, I said quietly. Grace blinked once. You did? Yeah. And you didn't stop. No. Why? I looked at the table, then forced myself to look back up. Because I knew if I saw you, I might stay. Her mouth tightened a little. And that would have been so terrible. At 18, I thought so. I let out a breath. Not because of you. Because I had this idea in my head that staying meant losing. Like if I didn't leave right then, I'd become small. Stuck. Like everyone would know I was afraid. Grace stared at me. So you proved you weren't afraid by running? I almost defended myself. The words came up fast, old and automatic. I almost said it wasn't that simple. But it was close enough. Yeah, I said. I guess I did. She leaned back slowly. That's the first honest thing you've said about it. I swallowed. I meant what I said back then. About us. About not disappearing. I know you meant it when you said it, she said. That was part of why it hurt. I didn't have a clean answer for that. There are things you do when you're young that follow you around like a second shadow. You can dress better, earn money, get older, sign papers, change cities, and still one bad choice waits for you in a coffee shop 12 years later. Grace turned her cup in her hands. Do you think about what would have happened if you didn't leave? She asked. I gave a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. More than I should. Her eyes lifted. Me too. The air between us changed then. Not easier exactly. Just more honest. She looked out the window. We didn't get a fair chance the first time. No, I said. We didn't. But we also weren't as ready as we thought we were. That made me smile a little. We thought we knew everything. We were unbearable. We were kind of great. She tried not to smile and failed. Sometimes, she said. For a few seconds, we were close to who we had been. Not all the way. Just close enough to feel the warmth of it. Then Grace set her cup down. If you're here to run again, I need to know now. I didn't answer right away. Not because I wanted to run. Because I knew she didn't need some pretty speech from me. She needed the one thing I should have given her the first time. The truth, even if it wasn't perfect. I'm not running, I said. I just don't know yet what I'm doing. Grace studied me. That's not exactly comforting. No, but it's honest. She nodded slowly. I can work with honest. My chest loosened a little, but not all the way. She looked down at her cup, then back at me. Then let's not pretend this is nothing. I felt those words in my hands, in my throat, in places I had kept closed for years. Okay, I said. Okay. Yeah. No pretending. We finished our coffee, but neither of us moved right away. We talked about smaller things after that. Her work at the library, my temporary remote contracts, my uncle's garage rental with the heater that clicked all night, her blue house near the old baseball field. When she said that, I pictured it before she described it. Pale blue siding, white porch rail, the kind of house Ashford was full of, but somehow I knew hers would feel different. Outside, we stood on the sidewalk with the evening starting to cool. Grace shifted her grocery bag to her other arm. I should go, she said. Yeah, me too. Neither of us moved. Then she smiled a little. Try not to buy cereal you hate. I'll do my best. She walked to her car, and I watched her go like an idiot. After she drove off, I got into my own car, but didn't head straight home. I drove past the library, past the closed flower shop, past the baseball field where the chain-link fence leaned in the same tired way it always had. Then I saw the blue house. I didn't stop. I just slowed down. Warm light glowed in the front window. A wind chime moved on the porch. Grace's car was in the driveway. For 12 years, I had thought of her as part of the past. Now she had a porch light, a life, a front door I had no right to knock on yet. I drove home with my hands tied on the wheel. The next morning, my phone rang while I was making coffee in the tiny kitchen behind my uncle's garage. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. Hello. Grace's voice came through light and dry. Please tell me you didn't go back and buy the Raisin Bran. I laughed before I could stop myself. I showed restraint. Good. Then you've earned pancakes. I leaned against the counter. Is that an invitation? It's breakfast, Nathan. Don't make it weird. Too late, I thought. But what I said was, when? Sunday morning. 9. Blue house by the baseball field. I know the one. There was a small pause. I figured you might. And just like that, Sunday became the only thing I could think about. By Sunday morning, I had changed shirts 3 times. That was embarrassing, considering Grace had called it breakfast like it was nothing. Pancakes. Coffee. 2 old friends catching up. Except we both knew that was not what this was anymore. I parked in front of her blue house at 8:58 and sat there with both hands on the wheel. The place looked even warmer up close. Pale blue siding, white porch rail, one hanging basket by the steps, and a small wind chime moving in the morning air. Before I could overthink myself into driving around the block, the front door opened. Grace stepped onto the porch in jeans and a soft gray sweater, hair tied back loose, holding a mug. You planning to come in? She called. Or just stare at my house until the neighbors call my mom? I got out fast. I was gathering courage. For pancakes. For you. That slipped out before I could stop it. Grace looked at me for a second, then hid a smile behind her mug. Come inside, Nathan. Her kitchen smelled like vanilla, coffee, and warm butter. There were strawberries in a bowl on the counter and pancake batter on the stove. It was the kind of kitchen that made you lower your voice without knowing why. Not fancy, just lived in. A blue dish towel over the oven handle. A stack of mail near the toaster. A radio playing low by the window. You cook now? I asked. I always cooked. You made boxed mac and cheese and called it dinner. I was 17. You were confident. She pointed the spatula at me. Sit down before I change my mind. I sat at the little table by the window while she flipped pancakes. It felt strangely easy for about 10 minutes. We talked about harmless things. My rental with the clicking heater. Her library regulars. The old man at the farmer's market who still sold peaches like he was doing everyone a favor. Then she put a plate in front of me, sat across from me, and looked at me over her coffee. So, she said, what's the plan for us pretending we're just 2 old friends catching up? I looked at the pancakes, then at her. I don't think I'm good at pretending anymore. You used to be. I used to think I was good at a lot of things. She held my gaze. And now I don't want to pretend this is casual. Grace's face changed. Not much, but enough. Like she had been ready for me to step back and didn't know what to do when I stepped forward. Good, she said quietly. Because I don't either. After breakfast, she washed the plates and I dried them. It was such a normal thing, standing shoulder to shoulder at her sink, that it almost felt more personal than our talk at Millie's. Her elbow brushed mine once, and neither of us moved away right away. Then she looked out the kitchen window toward the old baseball field. Want to walk? I knew where she meant before she said it. The field was only a few blocks away. We walked there slowly, past small houses and parked trucks and lawns that needed mowing. The chain-link fence was still bent near the third baseline. The dugout roof sagged a little. The bleachers looked older than I remembered, silver boards dulled by rain and summers. Grace climbed up first and sat halfway to the top. I sat beside her, leaving a careful space between us. She looked out over the empty field. Do you remember the night you told me you got accepted in Seattle? I nodded. We sat right here. I know. I acted happy. You were happy for me. I was, she said. But I also felt like somebody had opened a door under my feet. I turned toward her. You never said that. I was 18, Nathan. I thought loving you meant cheering for you even if it hurt. The words landed quietly, but they hit hard. I wish you had told me. I did, in every way except saying it. I looked down at my hands. She was right. I remembered her being quieter that night. I remembered how she kept smiling too late, like she was trying to catch up with herself. I had noticed. I just had not wanted to understand. I don't regret leaving to grow up, I said. I regret thinking growing up meant cutting everything off. Grace looked at me. That sounds like something you had to learn the hard way. Yeah, I'm not recommending it. That got a small laugh out of her. The wind moved across the field. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked twice and stopped. I reached for her hand, slowly, giving her enough time to pull back. She didn't. Her fingers were warm, and for a second neither of us spoke. We just sat there holding hands on the same bleachers where we used to plan a future we were too young to understand. Grace looked at our hands. I don't want to rush, she said. Me neither. But I also don't want to be cautious forever. I don't either. She turned to me, and there was something careful in her eyes, but not fear exactly. More like she was standing at the edge of a road she had promised herself she would never walk again. This is the part where you don't run, she said. My throat tightened. I'm not running. She watched me like she needed to hear whether the words had weight. Then she leaned closer. The first kiss was not like being 18 again. It was slower than that, more aware. No big movie moment. No sudden music. No pretending time had disappeared. It was just Grace's hand in mine, her shoulder against my arm, and both of us choosing not to move away. When she pulled back, she looked almost surprised. I smiled a little. You okay? Yeah, she said. Just checking if that was a bad idea. And she glanced at my mouth, then back at my eyes. Not bad. After that, we didn't make a big announcement to the town or act like everything was settled. We just started seeing each other. A Wednesday evening turned into cooking at her place. A Friday turned into sitting on her couch with the windows open while rain tapped the porch roof. Sometimes we talked about old memories and laughed. Sometimes we talked about the rough parts of our marriages and got quiet. One night, while I was chopping onions badly at her counter, she leaned against the fridge and said, "You're softer now." I looked up. Is that bad? No. She smiled. It's brave. That stayed with me more than she probably knew. A week later, I drove to Seattle to finish what I had been avoiding. The city looked the same, but I didn't feel the same in it. I packed the last boxes from my old office, signed the lease termination for the apartment I had been paying for even after leaving, and stood in the empty living room listening to traffic below. For years, I thought that noise meant I had made it. Now it just sounded like somewhere I had survived. I loaded my car before sunset and drove south with my old desk lamp, 2 boxes of books, and a strange calm in my chest. When I got back to Ashford, I went straight to Grace's. She opened the door before I knocked twice. You're back, she said. I'm back. Her eyes moved over my face. How was it? Done, I said. Office cleared. Lease ended. No loose ends. Grace went still. What does that mean? It means I'm staying in Ashford. She looked down for a second, and when she looked up, her eyes were bright. I was afraid to ask you to stay. I stepped closer. You didn't have to. She came into my arms then, fast and quiet, like she had been holding herself steady all week and finally let go. I held her on the porch of the blue house, near the old baseball field, with the evening light slipping behind the roofs. You didn't have to ask, I said against her hair. I already knew. After I told Grace I was staying, nothing suddenly became perfect. That was the part nobody tells you about second chances. You expect music, sunlight, some clean feeling like the old mistakes got erased. But real life just keeps moving. Bills still show up. The truck still needs gas. The sink still leaks. People still get tired and say things badly. The difference was, this time, we didn't disappear when it got uncomfortable. We built small routines without officially naming them. Saturday mornings became the farmer's market. Grace liked to get there early, before the good peaches were gone. I liked to complain about how early it was, then carry the bag anyway. She knew every vendor by name. I knew the coffee stand had the strongest coffee in town, and that Grace always pretended she didn't want one of the cinnamon rolls until I bought two. Sunday mornings were pancakes at the Blue House. At first, I came over with excuses. I brought coffee beans, then strawberries, then a new pan because hers had a handle that wobbled like it was trying to escape. By the fourth Sunday, she opened the door and said, "You know you don't need to bring an offering every time you come here. I'm being useful. You're being nervous. Can it be both?" She smiled and stepped aside. Wednesday nights turned into cooking nights. We ruined a pasta sauce once because I added too much salt, and Grace laughed so hard she had to sit down. Another night, she burned toast while telling me a story about a library board meeting that sounded more dramatic than anything on television. Some evenings, we just sat on her couch with the windows open. The Blue House had its own sounds. The hum of the fridge, the wind chime on the porch, the old floor creaking when either of us walked from the kitchen to the living room. I started leaving things there by accident. A sweatshirt on the back of a chair, my phone charger near the outlet, a book on her coffee table. Grace noticed all of it, but she didn't tease me right away. One night, she picked up my sweatshirt, folded it, and set it beside her blanket. "You're spreading," she said. "I can take it home." I didn't say that, so I left it there. Still, we had rough moments. When I got stressed, I got quiet. That had always been my habit. I didn't storm out or argue. I just shut down and told myself I was handling things. Grace saw through it fast. One night, after a call about some contract work went badly, I sat at her kitchen table barely answering her. She put down her mug and said, "Are you here with me? Or are you somewhere else pretending I can't tell?" I looked at her, already defensive. "I'm just tired." "I believe you. That's not what I asked." The old version of me would have made an excuse. Maybe gone for a drive. Maybe acted like she was pushing too hard. Instead, I rubbed both hands over my face and said, "I'm scared I made the wrong choice." Grace went still. Not angry. Hurt, maybe. But she stayed in the chair. "About Ashford?" she asked. "About everything. Work. Money. Starting over. Not because of you." She nodded slowly, but I could tell that last part still landed sharp. "Thank you for saying it," she said. "But next time, say it before you turn into a locked door." That was fair. Grace had her own way of pulling back too. If she felt overwhelmed, she got busy. Too busy. Cleaning counters that were already clean. Answering texts she could answer later. Making herself useful so she didn't have to be honest. I learned to ask, "Are you leaving the room without leaving the room?" She hated that I was right. 2 months after that first coffee, we drove out to the lake. It was late afternoon, warm but not hot, with a light breeze moving over the water. The old dock was still there, though one side had been repaired with newer boards. We walked out to the end and sat with our legs hanging over the edge. For a while, neither of us talked. That was another thing that had changed. Silence with Grace used to make me feel like I had to fill it. Now it felt like a place we could both rest. She leaned back on her hands and looked across the water. "I used to come here after you left." I turned toward her. Yeah. I'd sit right about here and try to convince myself I didn't miss you." I looked down at the water moving under the dock. Did it work? No. She gave a quiet laugh. Not even a little. "I missed you too." She looked at me. "You had a strange way of showing it." "I know. Why didn't you ever call?" I had asked myself that question enough times to know the answer, but saying it out loud still took effort. "Because if I heard your voice, I would have wanted to come back," I said. "And back then, I wasn't ready to choose this life." Grace watched me carefully. "This life," she said. "You, Ashford. Something honest. Something I couldn't turn into a story about ambition." She looked back at the lake. "I used to think I was the thing you had to escape." I shook my head. "No, you were the thing that made me question leaving." Her eyes softened, but she didn't smile. Then she asked the question I think she had been carrying since the grocery store. "If you get another big offer somewhere else one day, will you leave again?" Write in the comments. Would you trust Nathan after he already left once? Or would you need him to prove for a long time that this time he really means to stay? The wind moved between us. I could have said a lot of things. I could have said we would talk about it if it happened. I could have said opportunity mattered. I could have said I didn't know the future. All of that might have been reasonable. But it was not the answer she needed. And it was not the answer I believed anymore. "I won't build a life I'm not willing to stay for," I said. Grace's face changed slowly, like she was letting the words reach all the places that still didn't fully trust me. Then she leaned in and kissed me. There was no hesitation this time. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine for a second. "I used to think you were the one that got away," she said. "And now? Now I think you just needed time to find your way back." I looked at her, at the woman she had become. Not the girl I left behind. Not some memory I could polish until it looked easy. A real person with her own scars, her own humor, her own locked doors, her own courage. She had known me before the job titles, before the apartment views, before the marriage that didn't last, before I learned how much noise a person could hide inside. And somehow, she still wanted the man sitting beside her. The sun dropped lower, turning the lake gold at the edges. Somewhere behind us, a truck passed on the road. Grace took my hand, and I held on. For most of my life, I had thought the future was somewhere else. A bigger city, a better title, a louder room, a place far enough away that nobody knew the younger version of me who had made promises he didn't keep. But sitting on that dock with Grace, I didn't see the future as an escape route anymore. I saw Ashford. I saw the blue house by the baseball field. I saw pancakes on Sunday mornings, farmers market peaches, Wednesday dinners, quiet evenings with the windows open, and conversations honest enough to keep us from turning away. I saw a life I could actually stand inside. And for the first time, staying didn't feel small. With Grace beside me, it felt like the biggest adventure of my life.